This is things I wish I could say in Sunday school. I want to share some thoughts and ideas that are different than what we usually hear. My goal is to be really honest rather than inherently faith-promoting. I hope these ideas may spark some interesting discussions with your friends, families, or classes. Please enjoy. This is a lesson for March 2nd through 8th, Genesis chapters 24 through 33. Today's topics are covenant marriage, dishonest leadership, and complicated family relationships. One of the manual topics this week is covenant marriage. This is brought up in the context of Abraham and Sarah arranging a marriage for Isaac. They would not allow him to marry a local. So they went back to Abraham's family, and Isaac married his first cousin once removed, probably because Abraham and Sarah were so old when they had Isaac. Cousin marriage isn't great, but better than Isaac's parents because Abraham and Sarah were half-siblings. The manual is using these incestuous or near-incestuous relationships as an example to emulate. And I understand it was a different time, but it's weird to talk about how important covenant marriage is in this context. I also get anti-race mixing vibes from the manual here, which I think is pretty evil. It's just a form of racism. But the manual doesn't say it explicitly now. Yet I remember from my young men's lesson manuals in the late 90s that they did oppose race mixing explicitly with quotes from church leaders. But they explained it saying relationships are hard and even harder if you're from different cultures. So I guess this is the way it's evolved. It's too obviously racist to just say, stick to your own now. So instead, they say God forbade Isaac to marry a Canaanite and hold that up as an example while they talk about covenant marriage. I also want to draw attention to the term covenant marriage. My whole life, the church has preferred the terms eternal marriage, temple marriage, or even celestial marriage. Covenant marriage being used here feels like a rebrand of prior terminology. So expect to see covenant marriage used a lot more in conference talks and when those talks are regurgitated in church lessons and talks. My next topic I'm going to discuss today is dishonest leadership. I was specifically thinking about Laban, Jacob's father-in-law. He was dishonest in his dealings with Jacob a lot. Jacob wanted to marry Rachel, who was his cousin. He agreed to work for Laban for 7 years, and in return, he would marry Rachel. But Laban swapped his daughters out at the time of marriage, and Jacob unknowingly married Leah instead. Laban extracted another 7 years of labor out of Jacob by marrying Rachel to him in addition to Leah. Then Jacob wanted to receive some wages and livestock for additional labor, and Laban agreed, and then reneged repeatedly. Jacob says Laban changed his wages 10 times. So Jacob finally tries to take his family and stuff and leaves in secret. Laban is shocked and chases Jacob down over a week. Laban accuses Jacob of stealing his daughters, and Jacob replies that he didn't think Laban would let him leave with his wives. Jacob says, "It's been 20 years. What have I done to wrong you?" Laban finally relents and gives them all his blessing. Initially, Laban just reminded me of a really bad boss. He holds all the power and feels entitled to basically do whatever he wanted. He was constantly changing the contract instead of honoring his commitments. You can't trust him at all, and yet you're at the mercy of his whims. Laban is awful. Don't be like that in your own life and avoid people who are. Honor your commitments if you can, and if you can't, be upfront about it. Don't take advantage of other people. I see people who brag about screwing over other people for their own gain, and it's deplorable. And if you're an employer, hire good people and pay them well. 90% of the time, you'll get more productivity for the money that way than trying to extract as much as you can from employees, paying them as little as you can. Taking advantage of employees just leads to them doing as little work as they can get away with until they can move on to better employment. We can also apply these same basic principles to church leaders and political leaders, where I see many similar issues of taking advantage of others for their own enrichment. I personally think that if you truly love others like Jesus taught, you wouldn't take advantage of others. You would treat them well. Unfortunately, it feels like many, maybe even the majority of people in the United States, think it's a power move to take advantage, when really it's despicable. The last topic I'm going to discuss today is the reconciliation between Jacob and Esau and complicated family relationships. One of the things I like about these stories in the Old Testament is that all the characters are flawed in obvious ways. Isaac and Rebekah played favorites with their twin sons. Isaac preferred Esau, and Rebekah preferred Jacob. Esau sold his birthright for a mess of pottage. Jacob and Rebekah worked a complicated scheme to trick Isaac into blessing Jacob, including a costume change to deceive a blind man. There is a big rift between Esau and Jacob. I imagine there was a lot of small fighting between them growing up. If Esau was a great brother, I have doubts that Jacob would have bought his birthright with pottage. Jacob took advantage of Esau, who was in a weakened state. Not classy. But Jacob's betrayal of Esau and tricking their father into blessing Jacob instead of Esau is next level awful. I don't think I would ever feel a desire for reconciliation for someone that betrayed me that deeply. Esau was enraged and consoled himself by saying he would kill Jacob after mourning for their father. Jacob leaves town at his mother's behest, and 20 years pass. Jacob has major trepidation about returning to his homeland because of Esau's anger when Jacob screwed him over repeatedly. Jacob keeps his favorite wife in the back and put the others in front in case things go south when finally seeing his brother again. Jacob insists that Esau receive a portion of his flocks and cattle as a peace offering. Esau initially refuses and then accepts. The manual paints this as a reconciliation between brothers. To the point, it asks, what can we learn about forgiveness from Esau? I actually think Esau was pretty icy towards Jacob. I don't see where Esau truly forgives Jacob. Esau simply chooses peaceful coexistence and lets go of the anger, but they will never be close. It's weird to me that the manual tries to spin this as a great story of reconciliation, basically encouraging us to consider reconciling with any family we may be distancing from. But to me, this is merely a detente, a lowering of tensions. I don't see a real reconciliation here. It takes a long time to rebuild trust, little by little. Now for my thoughts on reconciling with our families now. It only works if you both want it, if you both can be fully honest with each other. And it still takes a long time to rebuild trust. It can definitely happen, but it's pretty rare. It's also completely okay if you don't want to be reconciled, if you choose to stay distanced. That's a completely valid choice. You don't owe your family of origin your time and energy. But I think the easiest and most obvious lesson here is don't betray people like Jacob did repeatedly. That's it for this week. Thanks for listening. Please share with family and friends. Until next time.